10 more days before the start of training camp. Let's continue our position previews, taking a look at the cornerbacks.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Monday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Do us three favors: subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you to all of our returning listeners coming back to listen to Cody and myself continue to talk Texans. If you don't know, now you will know. I'm your Texans football analyst, John Some Sports Guy Hickman, on the other side of the screen. Texans Credential Media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs are over with, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started.
And on this birthday Monday installment of Locked On Texans, yes, yours truly, today is my 32nd birthday. Happy birthday to me. But on this Monday installment of Locked On Texans, John and myself, we are going to continue our position previews heading into 2024 training camp. Today, we're going to take a look at the cornerback position. And just like we did when we took a look at the safety unit, when we took a look at the linebacking core, we are going to start off by grading the Houston Texans position group as of right now. Derek Stingley Jr., a guy who is definitely probably, if he isn't top 5, definitely top 10 name on this roster, headlining this position group. Along with Derek Stingley Jr., you have D'Angelo Ross. Those two guys are your top guys who are going to be returning for another season with the Houston Texans. However, this position group is going to look a lot different, unlike what we are used to, because as we alluded to a couple weeks ago, Steven Nelson did retire. So General Manager Nick Caserio and head coach DeMeco Ryans went out and signed Jeff Okudah, CJ Henderson, Chris Boyd, and Mike Ford in free agency. And with their top overall selection, they drafted Kamari Lassiter. John, I'm going to let you go first. When you take a look at this cornerback group as of right now, what grade would you give them?
My grade for the corner group right now is a B. And honestly, I want to take a page out of your book. When we talked about the linebacker group, you said it was an incomplete. And what I want to do is kind of the same thing. I want to kind of slide the paper back to the student with the paper upside down and with the meet me after class, because we need to go over some things before I put this grade in the final grade book. But I think a B is fair. What doesn't take this group higher than that B is, as of now, I still need a for sure starter opposite of Stingley, but I love the possible depth of this team, right? I think one of the more underrated moves of the offseason was bringing in Miles Bryant over from New England. And, shame on us. I don't think the two of us have done a good job in highlighting Miles Bryant in comparison to Desmond King and looking at that nickel battle, right? So, but I do like Miles Bryant here for the Houston Texans. Both CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah, right? And again, I'm going to slap myself here. I thought Jeff Okudah would be miles better than CJ Henderson. But to go back to my co-host and good friend here, Cody, he's praised CJ Henderson during the mandatory camp a few weeks back, right? So, but between those two guys, I like the number 2 and 3 spots or the number 3 and 4 spots, right? Because, of course, we have to talk about the rookie, drafting Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia. Will he be CB2? Will he be in a, how can I put this? A I would say maybe I would classify this year for Kamari Lassiter, if he is not the starter, I would look at it as a trial by error year for him. They're going to put him out there, right? They're going to give him a chance to play some football. And he may be the CB2 by the end of the year. He may be regulated to, maybe not a snap count, but in terms of when they need him, he may be regulated to a role for this team. But I think he's going to compete for CB2, honestly, guys. And I think he's going to be pretty good for Houston. Mike Ford, of course, career special teamer. The depth for Houston is good, but like I've said, there's two guys looking to either build off a redemption year, talking about Jeff Okudah, or looking to redeem himself in total when looking at CJ Henderson. But as the position group stands right now, don't got to mention Derek Stingley, right? But we know he's CB1. After that, I am pretty confident that, number one, the front four is going to generate a lot of pressure that's going to help the cornerbacks. But I'm confident in either drafting of Kamari Lassiter to be a CB2, and I'm confident in one of the veteran players to step up. And again, we got to highlight Miles Bryant a little bit more because he may be able to come in and take over the nickel role from Desmond King, who Houston did move on from last year and decided to bring him back later in the season.
I'm actually going to give them a B+. I really like what the Houston Texans have done with their cornerback unit. First of all, starting with the addition of, I'm going to start off where you left off when you take a look at Miles Bryant. John, I know you're really high on Miles Bryant. However, I still think Desmond King has that nickel position on lock, and I love the fact that the Texans were able to bring him back as well. As you just alluded to, look, whatever went on during training camp heading into the 2023 season, where we got word that the Texans had released him, he did not make the 53-man roster. It was shocking. It was shocking. However, both sides were able to, make amends, and now he was able to come back and played a very important role for the Houston Texans to not only make the playoffs, but just played a very important role every time he stepped out there on the field, especially in the playoff victory against the Cleveland Browns. But even when you take a look at what's going to happen at CB2, and we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break, John, that's part of the reason why I'm giving this position group a B+, because whoever takes the helm as CB2, and as of right now, I think we all can agree it's probably going to be Kamari Lassiter. The potential that I saw doing mandatory minicamp and OTAs, watching CJ Henderson, lets me know that the Texans actually have somebody to where if he falls short of getting that starting role, he's going to come in and be a very good rotational piece, just like what we saw during the early half of last year with Shaq Griffin. And the reason why I keep bringing up Shaq Griffin's name every time we talk about this position group, because I truly do believe after the Texans departed from him, that is when we saw that position group kind of struggle, because he was perfect. If you needed him to start and be your CB2, he was perfect. If you needed him to be your rotational piece, and I truly do believe that is something that the Houston Texans was missing kind of later on in the season. And I think CJ Henderson, if he can continue showcasing what he showed throughout mandatory minicamp and OTAs, I truly believe that he's going to add much needed depth. However, when you take a look at Jeff Okudah, I think we all can agree on the other side of the break, he's definitely going to be the biggest storyline in terms of cornerbacks.
I think so, man. So we're going to talk about the biggest storyline for the corners for this group, and also why I think the biggest storyline for that group may not be because of a person on the field. We're going to talk a little bit when we come back. Biggest storylines, Locked On Texans podcast. I love sports. That's why I love talking Texans with you guys. I love it so much. I never want them to stop, but I know players need to break, unwind, right? And now that the playoffs are over with, we got some action in the MLB. You got some WWE. You got the WNBA, but we are getting fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, and all you got to do is open the app and Dream up big bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to fanduel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the MLB.
What I've seen from Kamari is I've seen a guy who's been locked in from day one since he's gotten here. He's been locked in. He's done everything we've asked him to do. Kamari is a guy who doesn't make the same mistake twice, right? He's very competitive. He's making plays, like instinctive player, and I think a lot of guys are fired up to see what he's been able to do over the past couple weeks. So excited to see how he's trending, right? He's trending in the right direction. Excited to see, how he comes back and where he starts in training camp.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. One thing about my youth that I miss is waking up, have to be up early in the morning to get ready for school. And as you get older, you kind of get a little bit more leeway in the morning with what you put on TV. But for me, it was always, I got to put it on ESPN. I got to see what's going on. Did the Rockets win last night, right? What's going on? What's the storylines for the sports day? And I was in the 5th and 6th grade. Always knew I'd be here, but the storylines back then used to get me through my day. Now we're going to give you guys some talking points, some discussions, some topics because of our storylines, Cody. And I think the biggest storyline for me is how can Dino Vasso get the most out of some of the guys that we are not expecting big years from. In this group, what player are we expecting a big year from?
Derek Stingley.
That's one. The ace in the hole. However, we've seen Dino Vasso, and let's go back and look at some of this. We've seen Dino Vasso, who has helped this team back like in 2021, helped this defensive unit force 25 takeaways. That was 10th most in the NFL. Also helped Desmond King tie his career high in interceptions that year. Also helped Terrence Mitchell career high with forced fumbles that year. We've seen him help Derek Stingley in his development as a cornerback. And the cornerbacks that have came through to Houston have talked highly of Dino Vasso, praised him, right, as a coach. But we got to look at the realization of CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah. One, if not both of these guys, will make the roster. They've both had up and down starts to their still young in their career, right? I think year 4 for Jeff Okudah, year 3 for CJ Henderson, if I'm not mistaken, give or take a season or two. Those guys could still redeem themselves, but they're going to have to develop. They're going to have to put it out there. And I don't think I have more faith in any other coach on this coaching staff to get those two players. And I'm even mentioning Matt Burke and D'Amico Ryans in this simply because they work with Dino Vasso one-on-one through their cornerback groups and practicing. I have faith in Dino Vasso more than I have in any other coach on this roster to pull the most out of both CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah. But that's just two players. We also got to look at Kamari Lassiter and getting him adjusted to the NFL speed. And I'm not necessarily talking about just how fast the league works in terms of practice game, by week, like how fast the calendar can go. The speed of the game is going to be very important for this young man. You guys want to, make a big deal out of his 40 time. In some cases, I understand it in terms of being able to recover. No matter what cornerback you are in this league, you're going to have to recover at some point because you're going to get beat. That's the way of the business. But getting him prepared for that and getting him to a point in place, starting in his rookie season, on how to battle that type of adversity when you are getting beat. So I'm excited to see Coach Dino Vasso. In my personal opinion, that's my biggest storyline because we know the front four is going to create that pressure. But can Houston be a top 8 to 12 team in terms of takeaways? Again, the ace in a hole of players we don't have to worry about talent and production-wise if he's on the field, is Derek Stingley. They're going to have somewhat of an uphill battle, but it's going to be easier with Coach Dino Vasso.
The biggest storyline for me is can Jeff Okudah make things interesting? Plain and simple. Because when the Texans signed him, I really thought that he was going to be this team's number 2 cornerback. Can't lie, it was a little bit alarming looking at the fact that he's going into his 5th season and this is going to be his 3rd team. And even when you take a look at some of his career numbers, it's like, okay, you could kind of see the potential. When you go back and you take a look at some of his film footage, you could kind of see some of the potential there. For his career, 38 games, 13 pass deflections, 168 tackles, and he's a cornerback that excels in run defense. For his whole entire career, Pro Football Focus has him graded at 70.9. Once again, you already know how Coach DeMeco Ryans feel about stopping a run. You take a look at somebody like Jeff Okudah, it's like, okay, you're definitely going to have an opportunity to add somebody that could keep the Houston Texans in the top 5 to top 10 in terms of run defense. But John, I must admit, watching him doing OTAs, watching him doing mandatory minicamps, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what in the world is going on? And I understand our listeners, especially one of our listeners, was telling us in the comments that y'all, especially me, was boosting Jeff Okudah up too much. They told us that time and time again. And by the end of mandatory minicamp, I had to come on this show and say, you know what? I 100% agree. Maybe I was looking too much into the good in Jeff Okudah and not looking into the bad, because you also got to keep in mind that this is a former first-round pick, number 3 overall in 2020 or 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And then two, and most importantly, I don't want to call it a done deal by saying that Kamari Lassiter already has the title as CB number 2. I mean, the young man looked phenomenal doing mandatory minicamp. You guys remember us talking about it. You guys are probably still looking at the videos of how he was able to get defensive stops between CJ and Stephon Diggs, what he was able to do in doing OTAs and rookie minicamp as well. But John, I look at it from a standpoint, even if Kamari Lassiter is not the guy to take the helm at CB2. I'm also looking at CJ Henderson, because regardless of what took place in Jacksonville, this young man has really looked good doing mandatory minicamp and OTAs, to the point I'm thinking to myself that he has an opportunity to start come week 1 of the 2024 season. So I'm looking at that from a standpoint. If I'm already looking at 2 guys that could be CB2 and in CJ Henderson case CB3, what is there left for Jeff Okudah? Do you just throw him on special teams? I don't think so, because you take a look at somebody like Mike Ford, who's been a career special team guy. You really don't need a Jeff Okudah at this point. I'm not saying that the Houston Texans should cut him or anything like that, but I just look at it from a standpoint going into training camp. Can he make things interesting? Whether he's giving CJ a run for his money, whether he's giving Kamari Lassiter a run for his money, there is something that's not clicking with him. And look, you already talked about Dino Vasso. I love that you went that route. But John, it has to be something that he can hold on to showcase what he can do in order to get some type of role with the Houston Texans for this upcoming season. Because I think not only myself, but Coach DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio, both of those guys are going to be very disappointed if week 1 of the regular season comes around and we taking a look at the snap count and you have Kamari Lassiter and CJ Henderson getting a hell of a lot more playing time than Jeff Okudah. Something isn't right.
I don't know if that will be disappointing, though. I think because let's look at the coach we're talking about now. It may be a little bit more disappointing for Nick Caserio, but hey, he signed both Jeff and CJ to 1-year deals. I don't think it's going to be disappointing for DeMeco Ryans, because he has preached since he got here, the best player will be out on the field. And if he deems that player the best player for that cornerback group, it's obvious, because we're seeing things in camp. We're seeing things on the sideline. We're seeing things with coaches that's translating to elevated play. We're seeing things in preseason. That player has gained the trust of Dino Vasso, positional coach, DC Matt Burke, and overall DeMeco Ryans. So I don't think it's going to be a disappointment. And here's the thing. I think this team is setting themselves up to be prepared for if a player at that position goes down. And not just the cornerback role, but offensive line, wide receiver, a tight end, right? So I think specifically with cornerback, because we've seen some injuries hurt that unit before, they're going to be prepared, but I don't think they're going to be disappointed simply because I think overall the better man will win. Your name won't get you nowhere on this team. Your draft grade, your draft stock won't get you nowhere on this team, especially for two players that have been drafted as high as they were in CJ and Jeff, and this is their third or fourth team. So none of that stuff in the past is going to matter. If you bust ass at camp, you're getting a spot on this roster. It's plain and simple. Guys, when we come back, Cody and I will discuss who will be on the bubble entering training camp for the cornerback group. But before we discuss that, I want to let you know about eBay Motors. The passion, drive, and patience, all of those help you win a championship. That's the winning formula for a championship. But it also helps keep your ride or die alive. I'm talking about your car. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into power, speed, style, or all three, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP of the road and bring home huge wins. Your car and CJ Stroud can be the MVPs in your life. You don't want to miss out on that, right? I know you don't. I know you don't. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers.
What stood out most to me about Jeff and CJ is you see elite movers, right? You see why these guys were top 5 picks, right? They have the movement skills. They're big, fast, long corners that can run with anybody, right? And they've had some ups and downs in their careers. This is their third team, right? And short careers. But as I told those guys, man, I don't care what happened in the past. You can wipe the slate clean. It really doesn't matter. Like, how can you come out and help us? And they've both they've been here every day of the all-season program, and they've done a great job of being dialed in the meetings and on the field as well. So I'm super excited to work with both guys.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Monday installment of Locked On Texans. That was Coach D'Amico Ryans talking about what drew the Texans into signing both Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson. John, I found it very fitting to play that video, given everything you said to close out the last segment. I still believe that when they signed Jeff Okudah, they probably had more faith that he could take the helm as CB2. However, CJ Henderson, as I alluded to several times here on this episode, CJ Henderson, in my opinion, has surpassed him in a sense. And I think, even though it's still a far reach, because I do believe that Kamari Lassiter has that CB2 role, on lock as of right now. But I do believe that in some cases that it might be a slight disappointment if things do not work out for Jeff Okudah. But John, as you alluded to, Coach D'Amico Ryans said on several occasions, and he basically said something similar to the clip that I just played. It doesn't matter what you have done in your past. It don't matter what you have struggled with. It don't matter who your name is. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is how are you going to help this organization get to their championship aspirations in 2024, and the best players and the players that can get them closer to that goal are going to be the guys that's going to take the field every Sunday, Monday, Thursday. I think you got a couple Saturdays in there. Then Christmas, that's a Wednesday. Whatever the Houston Texans play, those are going to be the guys to step out there on the field. Yeah, literally every single day. But John, when you take a look at this cornerback room right now, whether if it's on, making or not making a 53-man roster, or just their role might be in the air as of right now, who are one or two players you could consider on the bubble as of right now?
Before I say that, I do want to say, man, I think this wide receiver room is going to be so competitive.
It's a wide receiver room.
I say that because I'm looking at Jerry Wayne workout, and he looks extremely faster than he did his rookie year.
And to that point, I do mandatory minicamp, OTAs. He was getting some runs with the second team. Just want to throw that out there.
I say that because this is going to be a great year to use the saying iron sharpens iron. But, you know, you look at the battles between the wide receiver group and the cornerback group, but the bubble guys, man, I could see both Desmond King and Miles Bryant on the bubble. One of those guys won't make it. I don't think so. I could be completely wrong. One of those guys won't make it. And it's going to be because the other person, the other 5'9", 5'10" slot cornerback, is just going to beat them out. Not because of any other reason outside of that. And do we have the graphic for the depth chart?
Yeah, I got it right here. Just one right. Oh, there you go.
There. So, you know, bubble guys, man, I'm very interested in the battle between Chris Board and Mike Ford, right? Of course, those are going to be special teamers, but they are corners. And I think camp for them is going to be do or die, right? It's going to be for them. I think it's going to be simply boils down to, man, how fast are you getting down the field on special teams and making a play? You know, are you doing your job on special teams? Are you doing your job on punt returns? Are you doing your job on field goals? The small, maybe minute things for some people, they're going to have to do greatly. And I don't want to put a name on it just yet. But again, how I look at Miles Bryant is how I look at Desmond King, and how I look at Chris Board is how I look at Mike Ford. I think it's going to be very interesting to see which one of those, and I'm taking the page out of Cody's book, which one of those guys are going to be special team leaders.
The only guy on the bubble to me is Jeff Okudah. I'm not about to go into it again, but not making a 53-man roster, but in terms of his role. But John, you really blew my mind just now by looking at Desmond King or Miles Bryant as being on the bubble for this organization. I don't see it, especially given the value that Desmond King has here, because look, if push comes to shove, and I hope this is not the case, but if you have to line Desmond King up as your outside corner, one, that means that something went truly wrong with everybody, and that probably means that you have a whole bunch of injuries to the point you have to put him on the outside. But man, I don't think Desmond King is on the bubble in terms of making the 53-man roster, only because, like I mentioned, man, his value, as I just said in the first segment, man, when the Texans brought him back, he helped this secondary. He helped that position group and stepped up on several occasions throughout the rest of the 2023 season. Some of the success on defense that we saw during the second half, especially those moments where you was going out there on the field without a Derek Stingley Jr., without Jimmy Ward, without, you know, your front four was a little bit weakened because you didn't have Will Anderson Jr. at the time. You know, he was able to keep that defense afloat, and I just don't see it. I truly don't, but that's what you got training camp for. That is a training camp battle that we definitely gonna have our eyes set on.
And again, I think for me, highlighting the cornerback, the wide receiver group, and looking at Jay Wayne, I'm a huge fan of his. I hope he makes this 53-man roster. But how I look at positions 4, 5, and 6 for the wide receiver depth chart, I kind of look at the same for the cornerback for 3, 4, and 5. The competition, whoever edges the next guy out, it won't be by a large margin, I feel like. And we're going to see some competition go down at camp in a couple of weeks, man. I'm excited for it. Thank you guys for watching today's episode. Please be safe, Houston. Houston, please be safe. Get your water, your candles, your flashlights, everything you need to make sure that we're able to make it to another day and another day and another day after that. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Also, subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Stay safe, Houston.